All right. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Equitana USA's Equestrian Celebration. We're in week 4, I want to say now, and still going strong. Today we have one of our panels that we were hoping to do live at the horse park this weekend, but in lieu of that, we have several of our panelists who are able to join us virtually and discuss a topic that I think is really not spoken about enough, or at least in public spaces perhaps. So we're going to be talking about equine assisted services, also known as equine assisted therapies, and how each of the organizations that we have here works with individuals and horses very differently and the benefits of that. So with that, I'm going to have each of our panelists introduce themselves and the organizations that they represent. Why don't we start with Saddle Up and Read?
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Caitlin Gooch, and this is
Brianna Johnson.
and I founded Saddle Up and Read about 3 years ago, and Brianna came in and she started helping. She's an awesome help. We use our horses to encourage kids to read. The literacy rates in North Carolina and North America in general have been stagnant for the past 10 years, and I saw a need to do something about it. So I decided to use my horses, and it's been working. You know, kids get excited and they want to finish a story with the horse, even if they can't read. So that is what we have been doing here in North Carolina.
And Mary with Embrace Hope.
Hi, my name is Mary Poupon. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner. Most of my experience has been with victims of trauma. And then in 2013, we started Embrace Hope, which is an equine assisted psychotherapy program. It was in direct response to the shooting in the Sandy Hook school. EGALA, which is a national organization, international organization, actually came in and volunteered. And I was friends with a owner of a farm, and we became certified, and we started offering services to kids that were in the school. And you know, I'm very science-based, but seeing the transformation with the kids and the horses has actually been very magical and healing for them. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. And finally, Bravehearts, which is on site at the Kentucky Horse Park, where we're all wishing we could be right now.
My name is Megan Hill McQueenie, and I'm the President COO for Bravehearts. We are a PATH Premier accredited center. We initially started servicing children with various diagnoses in 2002 through therapeutic horseback riding. And then in 2007, we added veterans. We later started an outpatient clinic specializing in hippotherapy. And we also now have equine assisted psychotherapy as well. So we have a full-fledged organization. We have 2 full-time farms, about 45 horses. We have about 700 volunteers. We served over 1,000 individual veterans last year alone, in over 16,000 sessions, all at no cost for our veterans. So we're super honored to be here with you, Nicole. And this is my right-hand man here, Bill Mercurio. So I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Bill Mercurio. I am a Vietnam veteran, a certified therapeutic riding instructor at Bravehearts, and I'm also the Veteran Relations Coordinator, and I've been with Bravehearts going on 5 years.
Amazing. So my very first question for you, and Mary kind of already addressed this in her introduction, but what was the inspiration behind the establishment of your organization? So we can start with Bravehearts. We'll start with you.
Sure. Our organization was actually founded by Marge and Rolf Gunner. They're the founders of Bravehearts, and Marge was actually battling ovarian cancer. And really what got her through her chemotherapy sessions were coming out to the barn to visit her Lipizan stallion, Max. And she just felt a real God calling that she didn't know, first of all, why she survived such a grim prognosis that she had at the time, but she really felt her horses pulled her through, and she really wanted to share that with others. And then Dr. Gunner, who is a co-founder of Bravehearts, he was a Korean War veteran. He was a medic on the front lines, and also a cardiologist. And he found great healing personally from our farms. He thought that there was almost a healing vortex, he said, around the horses and our property. And he just it was really on his heart that he wanted to share this with other veterans. So in 2007, he really had the vision to start to share the horses and Bravehearts with other veterans, and really pave the way in through VA hospitals throughout Chicago to start busing veterans to Bravehearts. And that's really how Bravehearts began.
And Saddle Up and Read, what was your inspiration?
I worked with children at a Boys and Girls Club, and I volunteered at other after-school programs. And just working with those children and just seeing how they had their sight words and those quizzes every week. And I really used pictures of my horses just to encourage them to get through that and make hundreds on their quizzes and stuff. So I reached out to our local library in Wendell, and I was like, hey, I have horses. Y'all are the library. Is there something that we can do? Do y'all have any ideas? And a lady named Ms. Connie, she emailed me back and she said, what if we give children a prize for checking out books? So for the month of August in 2017, every child that checked out 3 or more books was entered into a drawing. And at the end of that month, we had 180 entries. And so that let me know that we were really doing something right and we were on the right path and we could just continue doing this. And since then we have built on with other programs. We've done reading tours and just went to other places and talked about horse safety and parts of the horse. So I really love doing that, and I love sharing my horses with children who normally wouldn't have the opportunity.
Definitely. And Mary, I know you said that Embrace Hope was founded directly due to the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. How did you mobilize in that time?
Yeah, so Annette Sullivan, who's the founder of Embrace Hope, had a farm in Sandy Hook. She was a riding teacher and instructor to many of the kids in the town. So after the shooting occurred, she offered her property and her farm to any family that wanted to come and be with animals and heal as a safe haven. My daughter used to ride with her. When she realized I was in psychiatry, she asked me to get certified because she saw what the EGALA team did originally. I was a little skeptical at first because I'm very science-based, but I have to say it's been life-changing for me. And so now we still offer services, and we're still working with many of the kids from Sandy Hook. I think developmentally at different times it affects kids, and now they're teens, they're 13, a lot of the kids. It affects people at different times. So it's still an ongoing process.
Absolutely. Now, the big question, at least that I get asked a lot being in the horse space and the horse savvy person in my family, everyone asks, why horses? Why not dogs? Why not another animal, a cat, that one you can have at home and be readily available? What is it about horses that makes them so magical, and especially for vulnerable people to open up? Mary, I'll let you start.
So, when horses were in the wild, they're in a herd, and they had to really survive because they were preyed upon initially. So because of that, they have a big sense of emotions and feelings, and they can pick up stress and emotions of humans, and they really will mirror what humans are feeling. So when I've worked with a lot of kids that had a lot of anxiety and fear, they really mirrored those emotions. And also when you work with a herd, they all have different personalities, and just like families or people at work or friends, and it mirrors the dynamic. So it's a really powerful intervention.
Saddle Up and Read, why horses?
Horses grab children's attention and they're non-judgmental. A child who might be reading at a lower level than they should be isn't really going to worry about what that horse is thinking about, because the horse isn't going to talk back and say, hey, you pronounced the word wrong, or you should be, reading better. They're just going to stand there and listen. And kids pay attention to that. And I love horses and I fell in love with them as a child, and I see how other children are really drawn to them. They want to know the horse's name, you know, they want to know what kind of horse it is. They want to know what stories the horse is like, and you know, their imaginations run wild. They can read any book to them, and the horse is just going to sit there and, you know, do horsey things.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they're still so magical to them. I think we often forget that when we're around them so often. And Bravehearts, why horses for you?
Well, as a veteran, what works for the veterans is that we find very much what Mary said, is that the animals have an emotion and they have a feeling. And veterans are looking for comfort, and especially the veterans at risk. So when we come across a veteran that needs additional help, when he comes about to a horse, the interaction is amazing. The horse, because of its God-given traits of being empathetic and understanding, that when the veteran comes up and he's anxiety driven, or he has um, a substance abuse issue, and he needs trust, he needs to work with the feeling that he can trust the animal, and the animal in turn needs to have that trust. The horses are looking for leaders. So in the process of finding that combination, there's a moment when the veteran identifies with that horse that is just amazing to watch. And you see it consistently when they come out. We have veterans from various VA organizations that come to us in a group. And the veterans initially will be a little standoffish, maybe not uncertain, as far as it's a large animal and people are not quite comfortable in the initial stages. And then we teach them to groom the animal or to come up and just touch the horse. And that moment of touching, that moment of communication is fascinating to see, because there's an underlying emotion that crosses between the rider and the horse. We also find that the Mustangs have a certain fascination for the veterans. You know, once we've had veterans riding on one of our traditional therapy horses, one of the conversations we get after they've had the experience and realize that they can control the animal, that they have some sense of worth and self-confidence as they begin to ride, and the horse delivers that to them, that comfort level, that where they sit on the horse and they breathe out and their anxiety goes away, and it's a feeling that they haven't had for quite some time.
Right.
And the next question is, when can I ride a Mustang? Because they see the Mustang as a warrior, as, you know, someone that they can connect with those feelings. And it's a heart-rending thing to see that combination and how much the horse will provide a comfort level for the veterans.
Absolutely. And you're kind of already touching on it. I know that you often use Mustangs in your program, and that there's kind of a mutual healing between the parties. So where do your horses come from, and how do you select a horse to be in your program?
Well, we get horses from all over. We do have a number of Mustangs that we have adopted out of the wild that have been horses we've brought in that have never been touched, never been haltered. And so that is, you know, a life-changing experience for the people that get the opportunity to be a part of that process. I think too that the two parts that I love and have so much deep respect for horses and for veterans that I love that parallel so perfectly are that horses and veterans both are brilliant at reading intention. They both are very good at spotting anyone who's not truly authentic and honest. I love that about horses, how they can surface the truth. And I also love that horses and veterans are constantly seeking peace. You know, we see a lot of veterans who are wrestling with depression or anxiety, trauma, substance abuse, and just really want to get to a good, healthy spot. And I think about horses, and all they really want is just peace. They just want to be out in the field, right, grazing with their buddies, just at peace. And I love that the fact that we can partner together, horses and veterans, to help one another. Our horses are pretty extraordinary at Bravehearts. We have 44 head of horses, and we have a bit of a wide variety of, from off the track thoroughbreds to quarter horses to paints to drafts to, like we said, a lot of Mustangs. And what I look for in a therapy horse is exactly what Gary and Bill talked about earlier, is that empathetic capability to really, to be themselves. We love horses that have special stories to them. I think we love that about Bravehearts too. The rescue horses and the Mustangs, the plight of the Mustangs being a bit of the, America's underdog, and how, at Bravehearts, we love comeback stories. We love it in our horses and we love it in our people, and it's awesome when it happens.
And for Saddle Up and Read, your situation's a little different, but let's say I have a horse and I want to join your program. Is that an option?
Right now it's not. All the horses that I've had since I was younger. So I've grown up with these horses, and most of them are older, even my dad's horses. And because the children, most of the times they don't ride, they are just reading to the horses. So they're either in a round pen and the kids are on the outside, or they're reading to the horses while they're in the stall. So they have over 40 horses to choose from.
Oh, wow.
So they can read to any horse they want to anywhere out at the farm. So I haven't taken in any horses specifically for our program just because I already had, so many.
I've heard.
I will say, I will add to that. Yes, she did. She Yes.
Oh, yeah.
She just got a mini, and I guess because he doesn't live at her dad's place, but he lives at my place with my mini, and we use the minis to go places. If we're gonna go to schools or libraries or things like that, different community events. The mini that she got is in training, but my mini has been doing visits for about, I guess pre-corona, about 6 months consistently, for reading and Saddle Up and Read purposes.
Yeah, I totally forgot. My bad.
Forgot about the little guy. And Mary, what about Embrace Hope's horses?
So originally we were using Annette's horses, who is the founder, and right behind me are two of my favorite co-therapists. Duncan was a big draft horse, and Willie was also wonderful. Willie actually has one eye, and he was really one of the favorites of the kids eventually. Sometimes when the kids first saw him, they were a little standoffish, but then I think when they saw how resilient and joyful he could be, they embraced that about him. And now Annette moved, and now I work at Embrace Hope is with the Sandy Hook Equestrian Center. And again, my equine specialist, we use her horses. So it's whatever group of horses like to be together. That's the herd we use.
Amazing. So on that, let's say I have my daughter I think she might be able to benefit from an equine assisted therapy for some reason, whether it's trauma or just building confidence. How do you identify somebody that is maybe an ideal candidate for that? Is there any kind of, model for that, or is it really just testing out the waters and seeing what sticks?
So I think in my town of Newtown, I got a lot of referrals for kids that didn't want to do traditional therapy, would go and sit in an office and they wouldn't speak. They weren't engaged in that way. So then it was kind of maybe the third type of therapy that was tried. And initially, some of the kids that even came to the farm were, not interested. They wouldn't speak, but then the horses would come up and nudge them, and the kids would warm up. And it's also the kind of therapy where you're walking around and you're moving and doing things, which I think for a lot of kids and teens, it's more comfortable than sitting in an office.
Definitely. And it's funny because I know with Bravehearts, we'll probably discuss this. a lot of people don't like the word therapy, and they don't want it because it's very, stigma about sitting in the chair and talking through problems that, you might want to solve in a more organic way. So Bravehearts, is there a certain type of veteran or an individual that will benefit best from working with horses?
I think, and Bill, I'd love to hear your opinion, but I haven't really seen, I've been around horses for my whole life, and I've been in the field of equine therapies and assisted activities for 35 years now, and I really haven't seen a situation that a horse hasn't helped. Physically, emotionally, cognitively. I've just been so blessed to be on the sidelines of getting to see so many, for lack of a better words, quite honestly, miracles, miraculous interactions of, how much the horse can do. I haven't seen a scenario where a horse hasn't been able to help someone. I don't know, Nicole, if there's necessarily an ideal candidate, because sometimes I feel like maybe we don't get the full story on someone and everything looks great from the outside. And then, the longer they return to our program, it's the more and more things unfold. And then that's when the horse, I love what Mary said, her co-therapist, Willie, that's when the Willies of the world really step in and do their great work. And so we let the horses do the work. Whatever somebody wants to call it, we certainly don't want to discourage it from that contact. It's so important. We hear so many times at Bravehearts that people, veterans, never could have imagined in a million years that a horse would have been the answer.
Right.
To me, I'd like for us to have horses much more front and center and much further along in research. And, to the Marys of the world, the scientists of the world, much more on the front end of treatments and opportunities for people that are struggling. And I think it's across the board in any diagnosis that horses, I don't think in my lifetime we're even going to scratch the surface and how much horses are capable of doing. I truly think they have that much potential.
And for me, thinking as a veteran, I also had never ridden a horse. I had the opportunity to come to Bravehearts through a Colin Powell event, and my wife had been a rider and had her own horse at one point. All of the services that we offer to veterans and their families is free, and that's a situation that really brings the veterans to a point where they say, well, maybe I'll give it a try. But at the same time, when I came out there, I had never ridden a horse. I used to ride the elevated in Chicago. So when I was out there, I found that communication with a horse was so calming, and I was in a high stress position. For me to come out and just spend time with that horse was surprising to me, first of all, because I'd always thought, horses are big animals and they're, maybe not so smart. And, you see them going around in a circle somewhere at a carnival or whatever. And that's pretty much your information regarding horses. Well, I was so surprised and so satisfied by the idea that when I came out and rode that horse, we started out as volunteers and watched a variety of veterans come to the farm and connect with the horse. There are any number of stories, of success stories, of veterans coming out in high-risk positions, very, very antisocial and, contained. When they come back from a deployment and they're thrust back into civilization, or in 3 days, the opportunity to get calm and to
Let down.
let go of all of that stress is pretty limited. So the opportunity to come out and be by the horses gives them a sense of freedom, so they can come and the horse returns that comfort. And I've seen it time and again where the veteran will come stressed out and he'll maybe not want to be part of the process that night. And through a couple moments of conversation and getting him to come over and maybe just touch the horse and then talk to the horse and then maybe put a brush on the horse. And by the time that hour is over, that veteran's coming back. He's like, I never expected anything like that, right? And even it's a little emotional because to see that
Change.
yeah, that change, that bulb go off, so to speak, where they say, wow, this is really cool, first of all, but I can connect here where I can't connect with my therapist or the guy who lives next door, or even my family for that matter. They don't understand me at this point in time. And that moment with the horse provides them with that thought that things are going to be okay. I'd like to come out here more often. I like this feeling of comfort, this feeling of relaxation. The anxiety goes away. We teach them to breathe. We teach them to let go of that. Whatever they come into the barn with stays at the front door. Horses are in the moment, as we all know. So they can't drag in yesterday or 2 years ago, and they can't worry about going to the VA a week from now. They can deal with that horse, and that's so wonderful and so cathartic for the vet that they want to come back and experience it more often.
Absolutely. And you actually touched on a good point. It's going to be the next question, but just keep in mind something about research and proving, I guess, the effects of this. But before we get to that, Saddle Up and Read. Is there a certain type of child that works best in your program, or is it really open to anyone who wants to give this a shot and see what happens? Or are parents the ones who contact you first?
We are open to anybody who wants to come out, and parents are normally the ones who contact us first, and they're like, hey, I just need some help with getting my child to read, or they just think it's a really nice program and they want to be a part of it. And oftentimes the parents are the biggest advocates for this. They speak word of mouth and say, hey, this is what we did today. Or they'll make posts on Facebook and people are like, where is that? And when they do come out, because we're dealing with children, we do ask the parents to stay. And those parents get really involved. They're asking their child questions. They're asking them if they listen to what it is that we said about, parts of the horse and how to maneuver around horses. And the parents will read with their children. I don't know how often those parents read at home, but I do know that when they come out, they're reading together, and that is what we want to encourage.
That's a really amazing point. You're kind of hitting both sides of the situation through the child and through the parents and creating that unity. That's amazing. So going back to research and showing the tangible benefits of this, I think, just me personally, that is one of the biggest issues of why equine assisted therapies aren't on the forefront of people's minds. You go through traditional models first. And it's also a reason why a lot of organizations can't get funding, because you can't really put on paper, this person started out here and they ended up here and it was life-changing. So Mary, how do we help address that situation and show really the miracles that horses are performing on people?
So, I think one of the issues is people speaking to legislators and insurance companies about getting it covered. They'll cover all sorts of other therapies, medications, and this is, an alternative therapy. It doesn't involve medication. It's very effective. It's very powerful. So I think more needs to be done to get insurance companies to cover it. I think that would be a tremendous help, so that anyone who has had PTSD or anxiety or depression or is going through a life situation would be able to access equine therapy. But I also think, like you said, more research needs to be done. And more people in the field of science, I think, need to step up and do more. Like, I always imagine, like, when someone has PTSD, the little part of the brain called the amygdala gets very big. And, there have been studies around that. And then the person's left to be in that fight or flight response all the time. And a lot of the kids that I saw, I felt like were in that mode where they were afraid to go to school, hiding under their desks. They would hear, 4th of July would be horrible for them because they would hear loud noises, or they couldn't go to amusement parks because they would hear people screaming. So, you know, as the kids came to the farm, they got calmer and calmer. And I can only imagine that the amygdala in their brain was probably getting smaller and smaller and back to normal.
That's a good point. Bravehearts, what do you think is the best way to kind of show that miracle and get more support for organizations such as yours?
Yeah, we have been very committed to serving people, and embarking on research is a whole nother road. And, you know, we've been so focused on, you know, servicing as many participants as we could safely and under the accrediting guidelines of our of the PATH, the auspices of PATH. But we have embarked on 3 research studies that we are, as an organization, doing. We started them last year, and we are hoping to have some substantial data. We're partnering with Baylor University and Midwestern University, and we have 3 separate studies, one of which is super, I think, really interesting. You know, when COVID hit and isolation, and you know, I think at Bravehearts, we've always believed in our programs. We've always known how helpful they are. I have to say, though, when COVID hit, it took it to a whole nother level. And so, for lack of a better word, we decided that now was the time to capitalize on that, if you will, and really look at the value of what our horses are doing and our farms are actually providing for people. And we really started a study specifically on to really capture the information right now of what people were struggling with when Bravehearts shut its doors. And, you know, we had just done a previous survey at the beginning of the year, so we were able to survey during COVID and while our farms were closed, and then we'll do a post follow-up as well. We're in phase 3 right now, and still slowly we're at about 60% full operation, and once we're back to 100%, then we'll do a post evaluation. But I'm really curious as far as what that will show, because we really had to go in and pivot and do a lot of exactly what you're doing right now, Nicole, with Equitana, and pivot and do these virtual events. And you know, we rolled out 40 different virtual programs to subsidize our communities because they couldn't, you know, be with a horse. I mean, within 48 hours of our closing our doors, we had cameras up in our stalls to run live feed just to let people see and hear our horses. And they said, but we can't smell them. And I said, okay, then let's make it.
So we made candles.
So we make those. So,
There you go.
but I really think, you know, as much as we did, and as fast as we were working, and as many programs as we were creating virtually, it still does not substitute in any way close enough to a living, breathing, you know, 1,100-pound, you know, prey animal, like Mary said, of the horse and all of its essence and everything it can do. And so I hope that we can, you know, capture some of that intel too of this terrible time during COVID, and really showing even more of the impact and value that our horses lend.
Now, for Saddle Up and Read, you already kind of mentioned that parents are one of your biggest supporters, whether through social media or just saying like, hey, my kid did this today, how amazing is that? What do you think is there a bridge to getting more funding for you? Is there a certain thing that you want to show people in order to spread the equine assisted therapy goodness?
I graduated college with a bachelor's degree in sociology, so I had my hand in research, and so I knew that I wanted to do our own research studies and provide our own data, because there's not another program that's doing this. Mm-hmm. And to be able to prove and say, hey, when children enter our program, this is where they are, and then within X amount of time, this is their new reading level. And I do want to be able, I want us to be able to prove that. But, you know, with this being so hands-on, I cannot do that alone. So I've been slowly just looking to see what's out there, who we can partner with, and who we can build a relationship with that's going to last a long time, so we can have that data. And I do think it's important, just so people know that kids aren't just coming out and just playing with horses, you know. Yeah. They're coming out and they're learning and they're growing and they're turning into lifelong readers. So I'm hoping that we will be able to prove that. That's the end goal.
Yeah. Yes. And you are now touching on my next question. How best can the community get involved and support your organization?
Well, with us, now everything is like on social media because of the pandemic. And like y'all said, virtual, everything, virtual reading. Ariana has read for another organization and just sharing all of those things. So I really encourage parents to share and try to reach out to teachers because it's hard finding, what teachers are, I guess, going the extra mile to make sure that their children are reading, because reading is still important.
Right.
Kids, the screen time has went up so much, and I would hate to say, okay, here's a video, you can add that on for the day, but I mean, if we're not doing that and they're not hearing these stories and new vocabulary, then they're probably, sitting at home doing something else. So I would really encourage parents to reach out and continue to share and talk and let us know, their child might have a teacher who's like, hey, would anybody like to volunteer to read this time? Because kids are going to get tired of looking at their teacher. Because my children are homeschooled, but I keep my neighbor's child and she does virtual schooling. And sometimes she is not paying attention when her teacher is reading story time because she's like, okay, you do this every day.
Mhm.
So if there is a parent who knows that their teacher is looking for somebody to read, call us. I've reached out to people on Twitter who said, their child was having issues. I'm like, well, you can FaceTime us and they can read a book to a horse. I will go the extra mile as long as that parent or guardian is willing to. So if people can just keep talking about it, keep sharing the things that we're doing, that would really help us.
Absolutely. And Mary, the same question for you. How best can the community help support not only Embrace Hope, but the greater equine assisted therapy movement?
Well, right now we're funded through Victims of Crime. So Victims of Crime in Hartford will reimburse for equine therapy for anyone who's been a victim of crime. But I think, what equine programs are looking for now would be more partnership from, I guess, corporations that have money so that we can get funded in order to do the research and help more people.
And Bravehearts, same question for you.
I think that spreading the word, about how impactful horses can be. I think that, like we've said, we know how much horses can help. Until the last decade, working with veterans, I knew horses were capable of a lot, but I can't tell you now how many times I've heard that a horse has saved somebody's life. Like, that to me is a whole nother level that I just don't think that we as a country, or we that have family members who are struggling, or neighbors that are struggling, or friends, can't take for granted that opportunity. And so I would say just spreading the word, finding barns and farms and programs to connect with, like our colleagues here that are doing amazing work. And take action. If you can volunteer, serve. If you can give, donate. If you've got a friend that's in need and you need to drive them to a barn, do that. Do what's in your circle, but there's things that we're all capable of doing, whether we're donating time or treasure. Do something. And especially to this community right here of horse lovers and horse owners, there's always something more we can do. And I think we all know how much horses have blessed our lives. And so when you think of somebody that's maybe dealing with even more than what, even though we all think that, we have full plates of how much more horses can help and heal, and that we have the capability to do that, to sidewalk, or to, connect with a business, like Mary said, to a corporation, that is a lifesaver to programs that are working so hard to serve so many people. It's tremendously impactful. So if more of our horse community could rally together and get behind programs, it would be tremendously appreciated for sure.
And just an aside, we do our Trail to Zero ride. We've done that. This will be our 4th year of Trail to Zero. I was fortunate enough to be one of the first 5 riders. And that's been an opportunity for us to bring prevention and awareness to the veteran suicide issue, that we have 20 veterans a day that are committing suicide. Those 20 veterans, if they were NFL players, that would be a front page story constantly. And we want to do our part to bring that awareness, and through that, people who see our program with the enthusiasm in New York and Washington and Chicago was overwhelming. And fortunately, because of COVID this year, we can't pursue that. But we are going on our ride, and we are doing our 20 miles because that's a commitment that we have to bring that number down to 0. And we will ride until that happens. So people who are participating, we have on our, if I can say that, on our website, we have a Trail to Zero Hero, which is something that if one wanted to go to the website, they could participate in. That's going to be October 11th in Chicago in Old Valley, and that'll be a virtual event, and they can participate by. We had one lady that said she was going to do 20 loads of laundry, and another wanted to ride a bike.
Come to my house.
You know, whatever they can do, you know, to
Clean 20
participate.
stalls.
Yeah, there you go.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, I can find 20 things for somebody to do.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's always a way to participate. And just as an aside to what Megan said earlier, my personal story is very short. I lost my son 3 years ago to fentanyl, and it put my wife and I in a very, very dark place. Me especially as a veteran. So we were able to spend 4 months every day with those horses to communicate with them, to talk to them, to cry with them, to share our grief. And I can tell you from a personal standpoint, they saved my life. And if we can get that feeling for as many people as we can, then we've accomplished our purpose. And we will continue to do everything we can virtually at this point in time, and then in person when the opportunity arises, to make sure that equine therapy becomes an everyday word.
Absolutely. And Bill, you jumped the gun on me again. You basically said I was going to ask about a success story or a very impactful moment that you've seen in the organization, but it sounds like you're living proof of that. So no, thank you. Mary, I was going to have you answer that question as well. Is there a specific story or a child's life that you saw their trajectory change because of equine assisted therapies?
I would say that every child or teen that came through the program was able to leave and be healthier and start living life again without fear. It just was very magical, and I feel honored to be able to help the kids with the horses. The horses also would gauge, there was a boy who wasn't ready, and I was trying to speak with the child, and the herd of horses came between me and the child, kind of in a protective ring around the child. And just that sense of safety. It just, every child and teen that came through benefited.
And Saddle Up and Read, is there one particular story that really sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, I remember being at the barn helping with one of the incentives from the library program. And it was just ponying the little boy around on the horse. Did that for about 15 minutes. Then he hopped off. I went to go put the horse away. And before that, I mean, we groomed him, tacked him up, everything. So it was a pretty long process. And I put the horse away, and he said, "Well, when am I going to read to him?" And I was like, "Yeah." Right, reading. You're right. Saddle up and read. Go get your book. And, I sat there while he read for about 10, 15 more minutes. And it was just like a reminder, that was why he was here. I did all this extra stuff thinking that, that the incentive was the ultimate prize, when this little boy just wanted to read to the horse. And that kind of put a thought in my mind saying, the reading is important and the kids can see that too.
It's so humbling. And like you said, anyone can participate in doing something like that. It's just the little things that we don't realize makes such a big difference in someone's life. Unless anyone has any final thoughts, I'm going to close this out here. I cannot thank you guys enough for participating in this. This is something that's really close to my heart, and I really want to get the word out there. And right now we're doing it through these storytelling moments. And, you know, next year, hopefully we'll be on site at the Kentucky Horse Park and get to share these stories live and show people the difference that horses make in everyone's life, really. And I also want to remind you, Trail to Zero right now is on site at the Kentucky Horse Park. You can follow them on the Equitana social media this weekend or Friday. Goodness, it's almost Friday already. But otherwise, if anyone has any questions or you want to reach out to these organizations, please do. They're always looking for help. And like we've decided today, there's always some way that you can do it, even if it's the smallest thing that you might think it might make a really big impact in someone else's life. So thank all of you for being here with me today. I cannot wait to have you guys next year at Equitana USA 2021. All right.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Nice,
God bless.
Thank you.
nice meeting everybody.
You
Okay.
too. Long overdue.